I'm just old enough that I can remember as a kid going to one or two gas stations that still had an attendant who would fill up your tank as you sat in the car. Our family would pull up to the pump. I'd be in the back seat, frustrated that my dad was stopping at this moment. And my dad would roll down his window, not with the press of a button. He would crank down his window and tell the attendant what type of gas he wanted. Now, as the tank filled, the attendant would clean the windshield. The wet sponge would make its way across the windshield, and then the attendant would flip it over to the squeegee side and carefully follow the same path. The cleaned row on the windshield would be in stark contrast with the bug-covered rest of the window. Row by row, the attendant would apply the wet sponge and then flip over to the dry squeegee. And after each pass, he would take a little paper towel to dry the squeegee off, make sure it didn't drip or cause any lines. You know, sometimes the pastorate feels much like that sponge and squeegee. We often deal with the dead bug smashed on the windshield of life. And many times the people we deal with are unable to see because of all the dirtiness they have endured. And as a pastor, I'm called to help them apply God's cleansing grace to their lives. Yet if I'm not careful, I can fool myself into thinking all they need is a squeegee. They need me to clean the bugs off. So I scrape and I scrape, but with very little success. You see, when you squeegee a dry windshield, all that happens is that you end up smearing the bugs even more. It's actually easier to see out of a dirty windshield than it is to see out of a dirty windshield that has had a dry squeegee kind of dragged over it. That's the story of many people when it comes to God. They've gone to church and listened to sermons and tried to read their Bibles, but they really aren't any cleaner than when they started, and many of them are worse. You see, it's not really the squeegee that cleans the windshield, it's the water. The squeegee might help it be more clean, but it's the water that does the real work. So it is with God and His grace. Church and preaching and prayer and all these other aspects of faith help, but they only help if grace is doing its work. That's an easy fact to forget as a preacher. It's also easy to forget that unless I'm dipped down into the depths of God's grace, all I will be is a dry sponge and a useless squeegee. Yet when I'm dripping wet with the grace of God, I can be used in mighty ways to assist people in experiencing that same grace. You know, today, I'm reminded that I don't need to scrub harder in my own lives or the lives of others. I need to soak more. I need to be plunged into God's grace and only interact with the world when every aspect of me is dripping wet with Jesus. People don't need more of me. They need more of Him. I am only of use if I am soaked in the grace of God. And the same is true for you. Soak in Him today, and He can use you in ways you can never even begin to imagine. Scrub all you want by yourself, and it's never going to work. Less of me, more of Him.